infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dwivedian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
We are able to maintain the democratic fabric and the democratic system.
I want to do something that can make a difference.
लगातार जनता की आवाज को सरकार तक पहुंचाने का काम मैं करता हूं.
I was a student up until very recently. I really want to work and do something.
Hello and welcome to India Sense. I'm Gaurie, Dwivedi. Dear viewers, we are turning the page today in this edition, starting a story which is not about geopolitics, it's not about the economy. We are starting the show with a story that's about the rise of a new India. India that is young, ambitious and shattering records as it goes along. And who exemplifies that story better than the 18-year-old Gukesh, who's now the youngest ever chess champion. Take a look at these unforgettable moments that tell you the story of India Ascents.
And yeah, my journey, it's been, since the time I started playing chess, like 6.5, 7, I've been dreaming about this, about living this moment for like more than 10 years.
All right, let's now take a look at the big headlines at India Ascents. First up, Myanmar's military junta loses its last foothold in northern Rakhine state as ethnic insurgents capture critical BGP-5 base along Bangladesh border. How will this impact the region? India Ascents decodes. Ahead of likely trade tensions, US President-elect Donald Trump trolls Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau again, calls him Governor of Canada. Europe teeters on the edge, deeply flawed upcoming elections in Romania, Georgia and Belarus, set to become European democracy's litmus test. Meanwhile, there's some political sanity in France as the next French Prime Minister has been appointed. New Delhi gears up to ink a $4 billion defense deal with Moscow. The move is certain to reshape the power balance in Asia. And External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar's straight talk in Parliament over attacks on minorities in Bangladesh calls them a source of concern. All right, our big story on India Ascents this week is from Myanmar, where the Arakan Army has now advanced into Mongdo, which is the key city in the country's Rakhine state. And in fact, Arakan Army is now controlling key border posts, including the strategic BGP-5 base along the Bangladesh border. In fact, the map that we'll put out for our viewers really will decode exactly how significant that is, because the group now wields significant and important power over those who enter and exit Myanmar across the porous frontier with Bangladesh. That you can see on your border, on your screens right now, what this border really means. And now there's a burning question here. Will the Arakan Army now move further into Bangladesh? They're already on the border. And specifically, will they target the key port city of Chittagong? Why is that significant? Because it has a population of about 25% Hindus, 5% Christians. So that's why it's significant and important for India as well. And any spillover could stir up long-standing religious and ethnic tensions that could trigger further instability in this region. As far as Yunus is concerned, he faces an uphill battle. A fresh influx of Rohingya refugees fleeing renewed violence could put immense pressure on a nation that's already struggling with a humanitarian crisis, further destabilize an already fragile system. Bangladesh already houses over 740,000 Rohingyas since 2017, and housing any more of them would be both politically and economically very difficult for Yunus and Bangladesh. Let's now take a look at how it impacts India. The stakes are very high for India as well. India shares over 1,600 kilometers of porous border with Myanmar, which has impacted India's social fabric due to the influx of illegal people, drugs and arms. And now with the Arakan Army gaining ground, Manipur and Mizoram are two states in India that may witness more instability and higher risk of cross-border ethnic tensions. Myanmar's mess also threatens India's $500 million Kalamandan multimodal transit transport port, which in fact links the eastern coastline with the northeastern states via Myanmar. Take a look and listen in to what the External Affairs Ministry has to say about what is going on in Myanmar.
जहाँ तक म्यांमार के हालत के सवाल है, म्यांमार में जो भी गतिविधियाँ हो रही है उस पर हम लोग लगातार उस पर नज़र बनाए हुए हैं। म्यांमार में हमारा पक्ष ये रहा है कि जो वहाँ पर जितने स्टेक होल्डर्स हैं वो सब साथ मिल के बात करें, एक कंस्ट्रक्टिव तरीके से बात करें ताकि वहाँ पर शांति फिर से लौट के आए, स्थिरता फिर से लौट के आए और वहाँ पर लोकतंत्र फिर से बहाल हो। तो ये हमारा आपके प्रश्न पे जो जवाब है ये रहेगा।
Let's now understand how it impacts China. Why is this significant for China as well? Because Beijing has been backing the junta, which is now struggling from Arakan Army's advances. The AA's recent victories have eroded or at least reduced China's grip. Over 40% of Myanmar's debt is actually to China. There are also huge Chinese projects that are running in this region, and which is why instability in this area or the fact that the military may lose grip impacts China, its interest, very, very directly. And in China has been trying to also mainstream the military and end its diplomatic isolation as well. A strategy that may backfire if the Arakan Army continues to make gains. And for India to counter China's ambitions in the Southeast Asian region and the Bay of Bengal and shift the regional power dynamics, it needs to tread with caution. Now, first, it needs to prepare for more instability in Bangladesh. That is bound to happen, and that will impact the region. Second, it needs to tighten the border security in the wake of refugee waves and ethnic violence. Remember, Myanmar is a region where India and China are jostling for influence because US and EU have very limited presence here. All they do is slap sanctions and further alienate the people. And which is why how they respond or how India responds to Arakan Army's wins over the Myanmar military will actually decide and dictate the future of this entire region. All right, shifting focus now to the first wide-angle story on the show, which is coming in from Canada, who said Chinese President Xi Jinping is the only one set to face the wrath of Trump and his policies. Well, it could also be Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau very much on the top of that list of leaders who Trump is either mocking or is set to take on in his administration. At Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump joked that Canada should become the 51st state of America, even as Justin Trudeau laughed nervously. Now, President-elect is trolling Justin Trudeau by calling him now the Governor of Canada. None of this is an off-the-cuff faux pas, but it's a very well-thought-out strategy by the President-elect. Trump's mockery of Trudeau has roots in their stark ideological differences, past diplomatic clashes, and poor electoral prospects of Trudeau in the upcoming election next year. Donald Trump's first administration, the US and in his first administration, the US and Canada had major differences when it came to trade. There were public jabs that were a result of the past tensions over trade talks, which resulted in the US-Mexico-Canada agreement, and the spats that actually included the very public spat of 2018 G7 summit, where Donald Trump actually called Justin Trudeau weak and dishonest because of their trade disagreements. But it's not just about trade. Donald Trump's tirade against Trudeau also aims to undermine his leadership globally. This comes after India has repeatedly called out Justin Trudeau for running an agenda against New Delhi and in favor of the Khalistanis that his government has been shielding. Enter Ottawa's so-called Hardeep Singh Nijjar's probe. The probe is an attempt by Justin Trudeau's administration to smear New Delhi's image to garner minority extremist Khalistani votes. This is Trudeau's last-ditch attempt to avoid an embarrassing ouster from power, a consequence of the Canadian Prime Minister's many failed policies and rock-bottom ratings. By questioning Canada's sovereignty, is Trump challenging Trudeau's ability to defend Canadian interests? Compromised that they have been by his government's inability to meet public expectations on immigration, housing and climate policies. Well, as far as New Delhi is concerned, it has every reason to smile. Shifting focus now to the other wide-angle story on the show. In fact, this is about continuing with Trump, but this time around the tirade could be as far as China is concerned. The one economy that's bracing itself for the onslaught of Trump's full spectrum of trade policy is China, which is why its annual economic huddle throws very important light on how it plans to really take on what will be a major impact from Donald Trump's economic policies. And in fact, there's also a major slowdown, an ongoing slump that China is dealing with. And there's also a slump in the property market, as well as stiff tariffs that it is expecting from the US. In fact, the world's second largest economy has been struggling with tepid growth for almost a year. And the Central Economic Conference has a prescription to address this, which is to put more money in the system and spend more, but without providing any details of how exactly this will be done. Till now, China's earlier stimulus measures to prop up the economy have prioritized export-led growth and focused on sectors where the government has already created excess capacity: electric vehicles, batteries, solar. In fact, earlier stimulus measures like the government subsidies for car purchases have been very incremental in nature. And why is that so? Because they haven't been big bang and the markets were expecting more. Something that it hasn't done since 2008 financial crisis and have failed to address the core issue. What is the core issue in Chinese economy? It is consumption slowdown. People are not spending enough. And the outlook for the second largest economy in the world is not bright. Not because of, and in fact, the reason for that is a jingoistic trade policy under Donald Trump will mean a tariff war where Chinese goods will be, in fact, slapped with a 60% tariff. Exports may not be the primary growth driver. And secondly, because there is nothing being done to lift the domestic demand that could propel the economy. Let's see if Xi Jinping really has better answers. As things stand right now, it's not looking like that. Shifting our focus to European democracy and its model as well as experiment. Democracy is not a virtue, it's a struggle, a constant reminder of how political systems need to fulfill the aspirations of their people. And the one place where democracy seems to be getting a raw deal right now, believe it or not, is Europe. One doesn't think so, but that is what it's looking like because of failed or flawed elections and political landscapes in Romania, Georgia, Belarus, and the unprecedented logjam in France that only lifted just minutes ago. It shows that Europe is no longer in a position to preach about democratic ideals to the world. In fact, it should be introspecting or probably taking lessons from countries like India, which is running successful, large democratic experiments for the last 75 years. This report tells you why exactly democratic experiments in Europe right now are struggling and why 2024 could be Europe's big litmus test as far as democracy is concerned.
From the Black Sea to the Baltic, the democratic ideals that once bound Europe are now being tested. In Romania, the country's apex court has annulled the already underway elections in the 11th hour due to allegations of large-scale meddling by Moscow for a pro-Russia far-right candidate. Voters will now head to new polls in a moment that could define the country's path forward. The situation is similar just across the Black Sea in Georgia. Recently, the ruling Georgian Dream Party has put European Union integration process and its negotiations on hold till 2028, setting the country back on EU talks by 4 years. The move has triggered mass protests, with most people in favor of joining the EU. In Belarus, the situation is even more complex, with President Lukashenko's hold on power more tenuous than ever. The upcoming January election is expected to be a sham, as opposition leaders remain silenced or imprisoned. From Belarus to Romania and Georgia to even France now, where the people and politics remain in logjam, the question arises, is democracy being tested in Europe? The continent that preaches democracy now finds its ideals under siege, its very foundations being tested. Meanwhile, across the globe, India conducts the world's largest, most diverse elections in a fair, free and inclusive manner. Europe is a classic case of practice what you preach or risk losing the moral high ground. As NATO watches from the sidelines, the fate of these nations may soon decide the future of European democracy itself. Traditionally, Western European countries have been a guiding light for their Eastern European counterparts. But the French playbook is anything but worthy of being copied. As Macron searches for another prime minister to preside over a fractured polity, Romania, Georgia and Belarus all are waiting in the sidelines.
All right, it's time to slip into a very short break. Stay with us. India Sense comes back with more stories, more perspective, including what should be RBI Governor's set of priorities.
कैशबैक है स्लो करते नहीं इम्प्रेस लाइफ हुई इजी कितना कुछ फ्री ओनली विद सिंगल आईडी ये भी फ्री वो भी फ्री कितना कुछ फ्री ओनली विद सिंगल आईडी गेट फ्री विद सिंगल आईडी ये सारे ऐप्स मुझसे जुड़े ब्रांड्स मेरे पास है सबसे बड़े Get it, only with single ID. Get it free with single ID.
Download any single ID partner app, link your card and earn rewards with top brand.
Get it free with single ID.
NDTV Indian of the Year 2024.
NDTV नेटवर्क की तरफ से मैं आप सब लोगों का बहुत स्वागत करना चाहता हूं।
Celebrating the extraordinary.
Thank you, Gaurie. बहुत धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूं।
Honoring those who shape India's future.
For me, it is a great privilege to participate.
NDTV Indian of the Year. Only on the NDTV network.
New day, new show, a new experience. Start your day with the news, not views. We bring you stories that matter and impact your lives. News that informs and keeps you ahead.
From Maximum City, Mumbai,
To the state of governance, Delhi, NDTV brings to you the best breakfast show. The breakfast show.
Welcome back. You're watching India Ascends. We now turn our focus to the new man on Mint Street, RBI's new governor, Sanjay Malhotra. And India Ascends has a wish list for him. The priorities that India Ascends wants him to focus on. First up, he should be looking at more closely at the growth side of the growth versus inflation trade-off. Remember, growth has been a bit of a bubble for India in the last quarter, and prioritize growth over inflation, though it is a very tightrope walk for the governor. The second priority that India Ascends has for him is that the team that he will have for the 6 members of the Monetary Policy Committee are set to see some sort of a shuffle, and we want him to ensure that he keeps the team completely steadied, because there could be choppy waters ahead in 2025. The third key priority or wish list that India Ascends has for the new governor is that he should focus on providing for regulations when it comes to unstable deposits as well as big ticket infrastructure projects. That will ensure that the banking system of the country remains completely solid. The other key priority that India Ascends has for the governor is that he should ensure that the ship should be completely steady ahead of the US change of guard. There will be volatility as far as the currency markets are concerned, something that the RBI governor will have to take a very close watch on and ensure that India doesn't face any currency volatility. And then we also want, remember, managing the rupee will be a key area for him, given that rupee may come under pressure because of the trade tariffs that Donald Trump is set to impose in his administration. And the last key priority that India Ascends feels that the governor should focus on is to create a roadmap for cryptocurrency. The incoming Trump 2.0 administration will see major fund flows when it comes to cryptocurrency. Donald Trump himself is very big on Bitcoin, and one has seen that in the rally that has taken. And Indian investors will look towards the RBI for policy certainty, and that is something that governor will have to provide. As of now, India doesn't have a policy framework for crypto, but the clamor for one is set to grow. Remember, Bitcoin is showing that massive rally, and I believe India Ascends wish list includes that the governor provides that clarity to the investors. Listen in to what the governor had to say. All right.
I will uphold the legacy and take it forward. All businesses, all people, they do need this continuity and stability rather than, a day-to-day kind of a policy. So we continue to uphold this value, this principle of stability.
All right, it's time to get the top voice on the show. John Bolton, who was part of Donald Trump's previous administration, joins me on the broadcast to talk more about what he feels as far as this administration is concerned. Mr. Bolton, thank you so much for taking out the time and speaking to me on India Ascends. Let me start by asking you specifically about some very important picks in Trump 2.0 administration, including Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel as picks for very important posts in Trump 2.0.
Well, I think in the case of Tulsi Gabbard, she has made statements over the years about Syria, about Russia, about the war with Ukraine, about a variety of other subjects that are not just extreme in the context of the spectrum of American political views, but are really on another planet. And this is something that's been observed by a number of political leaders over the years. A year or two ago, Senator Mitt Romney said that her remarks were treasonous. In 2016, Hillary Clinton, then the Democratic presidential nominee, said that Tulsi Gabbard was being groomed by the Russians as a presidential candidate. So, I mean, here you have two diverse points of view, one Democratic, one Republican, two presidential candidates basically saying that that her views were too extreme, really, to be given a position of trust and confidence in the government. So I think we'll have a full field FBI investigation on her and on the other candidates, and then we'll have hearings before the Senate Intelligence Committee. We'll see. In terms of Kash Patel, he doesn't have the experience or the background to be an FBI director. His credibility has been repeatedly called into question. And I think the most disturbing aspect for him is that to have a yes man as director of the FBI, an incredibly powerful law enforcement investigatory capability, is something that I think is going to get very, very real scrutiny in the Senate when he comes up for his confirmation.
Okay, but what do you make of Chris Gray's announcement to resign and make way for Kash Patel as the next FBI director?
Right. Well, I think really it was very clear Trump was going to replace Wray. He was going to fire him, or one way or another, Chris Wray would be out of office. So actually, I would consider his resignation the first resignation of the Trump term, not although it occurred during Biden's presidency. It really was something that would have happened on January the 20th or the 21st after Trump was inaugurated. I know that had to be a hard decision to make. I've resigned from positions in government. It's very difficult, but the reason he gave, I think, is important and valid. He didn't want to damage the FBI by being part of the argument over whether Kash Patel should replace him. So now it's not a question of, do you think Kash Patel is better than Chris Wray? It's a question of, here we have a vacancy in this very important job. Is the nominee qualified and fit to fill that job? And that's really what the question should be. It shouldn't be an argument about Chris Wray. It should be over Kash Patel.
Okay, I know there's a lot of talk about trade, immigration being his top priorities, but in your assessment, Ambassador Bolton, Trump's top focus when it comes to India?
Well, I think in his first term, Trump established a good personal relationship with Narendra Modi. I would expect that would continue. I would hope that there would be discussions, not just bilateral, but with Japan and Australia on the Asian Security Quad. I think that's more and more important. I think there are a number of trade issues that Trump will be interested in because he's always interested in trade issues. And what happens on the tariff front in the early days is another major Trump initiative. We don't know exactly what he's going to do, but it could be very impactful. News that's just broken here in the United States is that Trump has invited Xi Jinping to his inauguration. I think he should invite Modi too, as long as he's doing that. We don't know of any foreign leader who's attended an American inauguration as far back as anybody can remember. But it's going to be very important. My own view is that the U.S.-India relationship could well be the dominant issue in the 21st century, and we have a lot to talk about and a lot to work on together. And I hope Trump understands that and acts on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a lot more to talk about, Ambassador Bolton, and I'm afraid we're completely out of time here, but we're going to have this conversation again soon. Thanks much for taking out the time speaking to me on NDTV. And in fact, on that note, as we wrap things up, viewers, scan the QR code that is flashing on your screens right now for all the other stories, exclusive interviews, perspectives, all that and more only on India Sense YouTube playlist. Thank you so much for watching this edition.
NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number one in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
Kumbh, a festival of faith. The world's biggest spiritual festival. The divine dip at the spiritual Sangam. A sacred confluence of faith, culture and heritage. NDTV's mega coverage of the Mega Fest. NDTV at Mahakumbh 2025.
This week on India Ascends.
New Delhi's security calculus as the Arakan Army takes over the 271-kilometer Myanmar-Bangladesh border. Why is Trump trolling Trudeau, and is it good news for New Delhi? As growth slows down, what are the priorities of the new RBI governor? What do flawed politics in Romania, Georgia and Belarus indicate about Europe's democracy?
All this and more only on India Ascends with me, Gaurie Dwivedi.